Hey guys, Dr. Michael Young here. Hope everything's going well in your world, wherever you happen to be. We are finishing up our spring break, and I'm sure you're all rested up and eager to jump back into all of your classes and start studying again. I happen to be recording from a different location today. Yeah, I'm usually in my makeshift recording studio in Bridges Bonham, West Virginia. Big city. But today I happen to be in Boone, North Carolina, at a house that I have down here. As you may recall, in one of the other videos, I mentioned that I used to teach at Appalachian State University. So, it being spring break, I'm down here checking things out. And weather's colder here because it's such high altitude. But anyway, we need to move along. We're into our 10th week. This is our 10th lesson. Today we are talking about foreign exchange. We're getting into some of the financial and economic stuff. So, right. Uh, I have quite a bit of experience with foreign exchange, just having lived and traveled through different countries. And so I know a little bit about the exchange regimes in different countries, particularly, as you might have guessed, in Hong Kong, mainland China, as well as the US. And so all of this exchange gets done on what's called the foreign exchange market. And so in international business, one of the risks that you have to manage is the foreign exchange risk. Right now, currency markets are going crazy. You might have guessed what's happening to the Russian ruble. Yeah, it's collapsed. It was worth like a penny. And this is because the sanctions that have been placed on Russia since the beginning of the conflict and the invasion of Ukraine has caused a huge decrease in demand for Russian rubles. And so that means in terms of foreign exchange currency, it's gone down. The US dollar right now, oddly enough, I know we're worried about inflation. So in normal conditions, inflation in a country should mean that the currency is depreciating, right? The, the, the dollar, it's becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So normally that would mean that we would think that if we would then go and want to buy, say, euros or pounds or something else, that that would mean that we're able to buy less because we're less able to buy less gasoline with a dollar. We're able to buy less groceries with a dollar. So it kind of stands to reason we should be able to buy less pounds with a dollar. But that's not the case. We're living in a very strange time because of the uncertainty caused by the COVID pandemic, because of the invasion of Ukraine by Iraq. It's caused a demand for US dollars worldwide because people seek stability. It's caused the price of gold to go up. And so, as they seek stability, they want to buy the world's reserve currency. The US dollar happens to be the reserve currency. So, they're buying up dollars. And so, oddly enough, even though we're in a period of inflation, our Federal Reserve is creating more US dollars all the time, but oddly enough, we're in a situation where the dollar is appreciating. So, but in terms of international business or international management, in general, whenever you're doing business in another country, you have to do that business in the home country's currency, right? So you have to buy pounds, you have to buy yuan, you have to buy Hong Kong dollars, you have to buy Thai baht, whatever the country is, you have to buy and do business in that currency. And so businesses, multinational enterprises, use the foreign exchange markets all the time to convert the money that they receive back into their home currency. If we want to use the Toyota plant in Buffalo, the money that's earned by Toyota in the United States is sent back to Japan, meaning that those dollars are used to buy yen, Japanese yen, right? So that's an example. If you want to make payments, a company for its product or services, it has to be in another country's currency. Invest cash for short terms in foreign money markets, or engage in currency speculation. There's something called the carry trade where you borrow, say, US dollars and buy, say, Japanese yen because you want to take a difference in those interest rates. That's called the carry trade. But the problem is that's risky because in the meantime, while you're earning that difference in the interest rates, something could happen to the exchange rate between the two currencies. But anyway, this is a form of speculation, and it's called the carry trade. So for businesses, functions of the foreign exchange is to help insure against foreign exchange risk. So whenever Toyota, let's stick with that since it seems to be working for us, whenever Toyota is doing business in the US, they have to have some way of controlling the risk involved with those foreign exchange. They might do it through swaps. They might have a forward contract or whatever. Forward exchange rates, when two parties agree to exchange currency and execute the deal at some specific date in the future. So this gives you a little bit more predictability. So let's say Japan knows they're going to convert their US dollars. Toyota knows they're going to convert their US dollars back into yen. They might have a contract that allows them to do it at a certain rate for 30 days into the future, 90 days into the future, or 180 days in the future. This helps protect them against sudden fluctuation. And another thing is currency swaps. This is when an organization or person or whoever, a party, simultaneously purchase and sells a given amount of foreign exchange for two different value dates. It might also involve transactions between international businesses and their banks, between banks and between governments. And a common type is one called the spot against forward. Foreign exchange markets are huge. It's a huge business. There are trillions and trillions of dollars traded on foreign exchange markets in huge volumes every day. Because actually that's a good thing, because that makes having a lot of exchange makes the market more robust. And the market's not trading, it can actually cause problems when there's not a lot of money trading. So it's a huge group of people. Living in West Virginia, we don't see so much of it. In fact, if you go to your local bank and try to buy a foreign currency, you probably can. The exchange rate's probably going to be really bad. But if you go to some international types of places like London or New York or Hong Kong, then this is a huge deal. There are lots of money traders even on the street where you can go and trade all kinds of currencies, and so it's very competitive. This is just at the retail level, but they also have at the bigger, say the wholesale banking level. In London, New York, Zurich, Tokyo, and Singapore, those are the biggest foreign exchange markets. It's a huge, huge business, and it's taking place every day. Well, what determines exchange rates? Well, there's one thing called the law of one price. It says that if you can buy an iPhone for, let's say, $1,000, I'm going to make up a number, $1,000 in the U.S., then, in the absence of conflicts and tariffs and transportation costs, you should be able to buy one for about $1,000 in Hong Kong, but in the local currency, right? Or in Singapore dollars, but in the local currency. It should still cost about $1,000. The reason is because iPhones are iPhones. They're exactly the same no matter where you buy them. Program in the language. And so, yeah, if you could buy them in the US for $500 and they were selling in Singapore for $1,000, well, lots of people would be taking advantage of that, and then this is called arbitrage, of course, and this would cause that gap to change. So this is called the law of one price. And there's something called purchasing power parity, which kind of takes advantage of that law that says that, well, in the local currency, what they do is they look at how much you can actually buy with the local currency, and it's called PPP. We talked about it in our very first or second lesson. And so it shows the price of a basket of goods should be roughly equivalent in each country in terms of the local currency. So what that means is that, for example, in Hong Kong and in China specifically, the purchasing power there inflates. That is, in Chinese, what they earn, they can buy a lot more than what we would earn. So this is for their salaries, they can end up buying a lot more because prices are lower. Basically, is what it comes out. And so this is called purchasing power parity. In fact, there's something that's a famous one. It's called the Big Mac Index that looks at the price of a Big Mac. In fact, I believe there's a video posted on our page that talks about this. I'll see if I can find it and post it on there for you to look at. And it's kind of interesting because it shows you how much a Big Mac would cost in different places. Another one is money supply and price inflation. If a money supply of a country is increasing, this means it will likely cause future inflation. An increase in the money supply makes it easier to borrow, which increases demand for goods and services. So a country with a high inflation rate should see a depreciation in its currency exchange rate. But as I told you, right now, the United States, we have 8% or something like that. Gas is, what's it, like $6 or $7 a gallon in California? Around West Virginia, it's at least $4.09. When I was there last week, it was $4.09. I don't know if it's gone up or down since then, but price of everything seems to be going up. But oddly enough, the US dollar is appreciating. And then another thing is government policy. This determines exchange rates. Really, investor psychology, and there's something called the bandwagon effect. You've maybe heard somebody say, just jump on the bandwagon. That means that if people think that a currency is going to appreciate, right, then everyone may buy into that currency, which will cause the demand for the currency to increase. So bandwagon effects and investor psychology can cause exchange rates to fluctuate, right? Because it's really, when it comes down to it, it's just the supply and demand. The supply and demand for US dollars. Luckily, being the de facto international reserve currency, there's always a good demand for dollars, which protects the dollar against crashes or depreciation, makes it worth more, trade for more than what it's really worth, you might say. And in times of uncertainty, there's a rush towards safety. Emerging economies tend to do worse in periods of uncertainty than do more developed market economies. So that means that whenever there's some kind of disturbance in the world, people rush to dollars. And so we're in a weird time right now where we have high inflation, but the dollar is still appreciating. So in summary, we've got relative monetary growth rate, relative inflation rates. These two are correlated. Nominal interest rate differentials are all moderately good predictors of long-term changes in exchange rates, but they're poor predictors of short-term exchange rates. Okay. And so let me start over again. Exchange rate forecasting. Well, if you're an economics major, if you study much economics, you know that there's a lot of disagreement among economists. Some people believe that markets are very efficient and that prices reflect all public information, and that inaccuracies will be random. There's something called a random walk hypothesis that you might have heard of. On the other hand, some economists believe that markets are not so efficient. Prices don't reflect all available information, And if that's true, then it's not necessarily the forward exchange rate's best possible way predictors of the future. In other words, if you can somehow predict what's going to happen in the exchange rates, then you don't really need to protect against random fluctuations. So this is a controversy that economists can't agree on within themselves. So people nonetheless try to forecast exchange rates, and especially if you're not in the business of currency speculation like Toyota, they do some speculating whether they want to or not, but by and large they're in the business of making cars, and so they want that to be profitable. They don't want to have their profits wiped out. They don't want to have uncertainty in the price and profits in the future, and so they probably have some sort of method for protecting against fluctuations, and so they may have some sort of forecasting, or they may hire somebody else. And, well, this is what it is. It draws on economic theory. They look at money supply, inflation rates, and all those types of things. And these are fundamental determinants of exchange rates, things like monetary growth, inflation rates, and interest rates, in an attempt to forecast exchange rate. So there are different types of convertibility of currencies. US dollar, of course, is freely convertible. Where I used to live in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong dollar was freely convertible. And then there's somewhat convertible, where only residents, this is called externally convertible. There might also be an internally convertible. Only residents can convert their holdings of domestic currency into foreign exchange without limitations. There are restrictions. Like when I left China, you could only, I believe it was 50,000 renminbi, which would be about 5,000 US dollars, something like that, per day was all you could convert. Or I remember when I was buying renminbi, there was a limit of $20,000. I could do it with my bank, but I had to wait every day and do a certain amount because there were restrictions. These are called currency restrictions. And then there's non-convertible. Some countries' currency just can't be converted because the government wants to keep tabs on their foreign exchange, and they just don't allow it to be freely convertible. You have to have permits and fill out some forms and have reasons, and it's a bureaucratic process for trying to convert your currencies. So, right, the types of foreign exchange fluctuation, what risks does it pose? Well, there's a risk on every transaction. If I need to buy something from China or Japan, there's an immediate, for that particular transaction, while I'm conducting and negotiating for buying something, purchasing from overseas, there's a possibility that it might go up or down in price because of currency fluctuations. There's also a translation exposure. Whenever a multinational enterprise has its annual shareholder meetings, it needs to bring all of its currency and everything in the home currency. Well, that might look bad at a particular point in time, because whenever you translate, say, yen to dollar or dollar to yen, that's changed because of fluctuations in exchange rates. And then there's economic exposure. It's the extent to which a firm's future international earning power is affected by changes in exchange rates, right? So this could be long-term and affect the long-term earning potential of a multinational enterprise. For example, relevant example of what's happening in Russia, right? Yeah, if you're doing business in Russia and you're getting rubles now, and you're looking at your projections of earnings, for example, you might have seen McDonald's, Starbucks, some of these companies are pulling their operations out of Russia. And it doesn't look good for the long term, even. Not just the short term, but the long term, it just doesn't look good. This is economic exposure. People that are doing business in rubles now have seen that their earnings decrease, especially when you translate it back into dollars. So what can you do? Well, you can reduce your exposure to translations and transactions by, as we talked about, forward exchange rate contracts. You can buy swaps, buy and sell at the same time. You can have a lead strategy or a lag strategy. That is where you try to deliberately collect your foreign currency receivables early. You try to delay the collection of foreign exchange receivables. So I can tell you a little bit about myself as we wrap up. I'm kind of exposed to some foreign exchanges, you might guess, because I have investments in different countries, different places. I happen to still own property. Hey, how's it going? Me again. I happen to still own some property in Hong Kong, and I was just talking to my ex-wife. I don't know if I should sell that or not, because I like to keep my portfolio pretty diversified, and I have lots of property and so forth. Income is earned in US dollars now. So should I try to sell that or should I try to keep it? I don't know. For the time being, I'm holding on to it. I may have waited too long. It looks like the property market in Hong Kong is starting to decrease, and as that happens, it's going to potentially affect my retirement. So, but anyway, that's it. I'm finished. This is Michael in beautiful downtown Boone, North Carolina, saying, stay awesome. Talk to you later.